Hello, and welcome to the Monster Painter. This week, I take a look at all the treasure I got at the Breakout Con auction. Yeah, I love treasure. Breakout Con is a board game and RPG convention that was held a couple of weeks ago, earlier in July, here in Toronto. It was really wonderful to see the event rise from the ashes of the Great Plague and host 3 days of wonderful tabletop gaming goodness. I had a blast. It was super fun and so great to get back to the beautiful big events full of people. One of the highlights of Breakout Con has to be the auction. People bring their unwanted board games, role-playing books, and other such tabletop things for sale. Calling it an auction might be a bit of a stretch, as it is a bit more of a bring and buy with price drops as the day goes on. And it is a great place to pick up all that fun stuff. I grabbed 2 lots, starting with this sack of post-apocalyptic terrain. I paid the princely sum of 30 Canadian dollars for it, and I'm very excited to see what I got. And here we go. First up is this dandy derelict diner. Like most of this terrain, it's made out of some sort of dense foam board with a digital graphic printed on it. It makes them lightweight and convincing. Next up, we have a couple of classic post-apocalyptic objectives. A very 50s looking fuel source and what looks like a radio signal upgrading station. The perfect place to search out other survivors. And of course, what post-apocalyptic hellscape would be complete without a grim-looking shotgun shack? The narrative possibilities for this thing are endless. It's well designed as well. The weathering on this shack is quite convincing, and I plan to use it as a reference for future projects. On to some cable spools, perfect for any industrial setting or depicting a college student's coffee table. And an excellent coal bin, which is going to come in very handy for an upcoming Frostgrave scenario that my group is playing called The Furnace. Next up, we get a bunch of beaten up barricades. The graphics portray a lot of weathered, rusty old corrugated iron and are rather cleverly printed on corrugated plastic. Very smart. I will be using this stuff to play Ash Barker's excellent game, Last Days Zombie Apocalypse, which until now I didn't have quite enough appropriate terrain to table. I can also say this stuff being useful as part of a particularly rundown edge of the galaxy in Frostgrave, or really where any kind of old, dilapidated 20th century terrain is required. For extra coolness, the pieces depicting wood have been scored for a more convincing texture. And if anyone out there knows the source of all this wonderful terrain, please leave a comment in the comment section below. I would love to find out where it came from. Finally, the last piece in the bag is this rather unconvincing pump jack. I grew up in oil country out in Alberta, and while it's not a great bit of terrain, it still gives me a pang of nostalgia. Okay, on to the real treasure from the auction. For the modest sum of 20 Canadian dollars, I acquired this tub full of miniatures. And not just any kind of miniatures. This tub is full of monsters. All sorts of monsters. And for a guy who calls himself the Monster Painter, this was super exciting. They are mostly all Reaper Bones miniatures, and included amongst those monsters was a couple of bits of terrain and a few monsters that are clearly not Reaper. Some of them need to be assembled, some of them need to be reshaped with some boiling hot water. All of them are super cool and super fun. Let's take a look at what we got. And to start with, it's a great big T-Rex. The king of the dinosaurs is in the house. Next we have a classical temple that has been left to wreck and ruin. I gotta love this thing. And here we have a great big dragon. I mean a really big dragon. And I better enlist a Hero Quest barbarian to give a sense of scale. I get a ruined gateway that will definitely be destined for Frostgrave. As well, here is a giant slime of some sort, and a metal dragon that may or may not be Reaper. We get some hero types from Reaper and what I suspect is a chainmail gnoll. All very good. Next up is an armadillo man and a giant cobra, both Reapers, and an exotic looking snake monster, which may or may not be Reaper. Moving on, there is a big translucent air elemental and a weird Asian style dragon serpent thing. Next up we have a little slime monster, an angry little dragon on a broken statue, and a great big mean looking spider. I know these aren't Reaper. All I know is that they are awesome, fun, metal mimics, and they're super cool. Oh, and there's a little bag to open up with more fun inside. I suspect this is from the Reaper Bones 4 Kickstarter. And if you can give a positive ID to any of the miniatures or terrain in this video, please let us all know in the comments below. It will be greatly appreciated. And the bag contained a little fairy with some spare wings, a second big air elemental, and a smaller air elemental. Finally, we come to this big old evil looking tree. It comes with a bunch of accessories, vultures, and victims, which I will be setting aside. I did a previous video where I painted this model up all decked out, and I'm going to do this one just as a plain tree. And if I were you, I would get the hell out of there, Conan. Now onto the fun part, painting up all these dreadful monsters. And I really have my work cut out for me if I'm going to avoid a huge addition to the ever-growing pile of shame. First up is that great big old dragon. He gets a base coat of bright green. Then he gets a thorough wash of a dark green, sap green to be specific, followed by a dry brushing of a lighter green, and then he's finished off screen. Next up, the ruined classical temple gets a base coat of a craft paint called cast iron, followed by progressive layers of lighter grays, dry brushed on, only to be finished off screen. Our ruined entryway gets pretty much the same treatment as the ruined temple, because it's my favorite way to paint old stone, and it gets finished off screen. I think I'm starting to see a pattern forming here. Our woeful tree of despair gets a base coat of raw umber, nice dark brown, followed by a thorough dry brushing of bronze yellow, and then another dry brushing of a warm gray mixture for that weathered old tree look. And yes, you guessed it, it gets finished off screen. I will be batch painting up the giant spider, the small dragon, and the exotic serpent with a blue color scheme, starting with a base coat of dark blue, followed by progressive layers of lighter and lighter blues, dry brushed on over top of each other. And then, yeah, off screen again. Alright, this set of dreadful monsters follows a similar process. They get a base coat, followed by some dry brushing, and then some more dry brushing, only to be finished, big surprise, off screen. The translucent miniatures present a unique problem: how to paint them up without losing that translucency. I base them up with a matte medium and follow up with thin washes of interference paint, a very transparent shimmery paint. We will see how well it works out because I finished them off screen. Finally, the wonderful mimics. Being metal, they get primed with acrylic gesso, and I develop a pretty standard treasure chest color scheme for them. And yes, I finished them off screen. Now on to the finished products. And alas, I only got as far as the base coat on this big old T-Rex. But she won't be on the pile of shame for long because I have something in mind for her. As for these 6 miniatures, well, I didn't even try to paint them up, and so tragically they're all headed for the pile of shame for some indeterminate length of time until I can figure out a project for them. I didn't quite get the sexy little fairy finished, but she's going in a good direction and I will get her done. As for her big dragon buddy, he is ready for the tabletop, if not totally polished up. And I'm going to add some polish to him at some time to get him completely finished. Our blue serpents turned out well, and they look nice and dangerous and are ready for the icy wastelands. These two are finished and ready for the sweltering plains. They look like they will be perfect for a folkloric buddy road trip comedy and are going to be a lot of fun. The Frostgrave supplement Perilous Dark calls for giant ice spiders called matriarchs, and I think I have found my matriarch. The little red slime will be getting work as a blood wave in our ongoing Frostgrave campaign of Maze of Malachor, and his big green buddy will just hang out and be disgusting. The air elementals turned out okay, if not completely satisfying. They are tricky models to paint, and I am still perfecting my approach to them. The ruined entrance looks excellent and will be hitting the tabletop a lot because it is a perfect piece of Frostgrave terrain. The mimics are just wonderful. Mirthful and menacing, I've got to love this pair, and just having them in the collection will make players very nervous. I really like the tree, and it will be a versatile and useful bit of tabletop terrain. In combination with the decked out tree, there are a lot of narrative potentials. Hey, Conrad! Hey! You heading to Candlekeep? Yep. Looks like Conrad got caught again. Dude, when are you gonna learn not to bring a highlighter pen into special collections? Finally, this ruined temple turned out excellent. It has a really convincing Bronze Age feel and will work well in Frostgrave or any other setting where ancient ruined temples are found. All in all, my auction haul has been a trove of monsters and terrain, and I couldn't be happier. And on to the fight. This week it's a small blue dragon versus a great big green slime. Let me know who you think will win. Next week on The Monster Painter, I show you how to paint up a haunted mirror. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ring the bell.
You are watching Les the Monster Painter.